Okay, we're back. It's still July 27th, 2016. This is part two of the third installment of Birthright. And we're talking about Bob's life and experiences and highlights and lowlights. We left off with him talking about time around high school.
All right. I'm going to fast forward slightly to 2001 for a reason. This will make sense in just a moment. Where I lived, there were two houses, one built by my dad for my grandmother, a mother-in-law cottage, a large one, small house size. The other was a house in front of that on the block where I lived. Parcel of land where I lived. I had a friend renting the house in front at the time. He called me up one day to say, when was the fire? And I said, what are you talking about? There's never been a fire in that house. He said, yeah, there had to have been. When was the fire? And I said, I don't get it. There's never, what are you talking about? There's no fire in that house. There never has been. I've lived there all my life. I know. He said, I think you better come over and see something. I had told him I was an abductee. He wasn't sure whether he even believed it or not. He had me go to the room that used to be my bedroom. He had taken the closet door off, and he had taken the door frames and the floorboards off. I liked them. They were beautiful. They had a lot of nice they were original with the house. They had a lot of nice personality to them. He wanted to put simple stuff, more modernistic in. At any rate, he told me, he said, look at the varnish on the back of the door. It's bubbled up. He said, look at the door frame, black soot. He said, no other door in the house is like this. No other door frame is like this. And he said, there had to have been a fire. Only a fire could do something like this. And I said, or perhaps exposure numerous times to various forms of radiation and the heat that comes from radiation. And he shut his mouth and his eyes got big and he didn't say anything more. He moved out quickly after
He gone.
I can't blame him. I can't blame him. But that's obviously some form of radiation was used to either break down my atomic structure and then recoalesce it somewhere else and then break it down again and recoalesce it back in my bedroom, or some type of alternate reality was created within the bedroom that became the dome-shaped lit up room, or whatever. It may have been that my bedroom was turned into a portal, the closet door being that, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, we've been told that the Greys were known to pick people up using technological techniques that were not as refined as some of the other aliens. In that it wasn't as safe, as it could be, because they just didn't give a shit.
Right.
So maybe it has something to do with that.
I'm sure that was the case. They didn't care what harm was done, as long as they could pick you up again and get what they want from you.
Because we have been made aware that there's several different types of techniques or technical apparatus that can be used to pick somebody up, and yet none of it looks or acts like they did on Star Trek. There's no blinky winky lights or energy beams flowing up or down. It just it's pretty much you're here 1 second and you're gone the next. It's
no beam me up, Scotty, or anything else.
Yeah, it's instantaneous. But there are we heard some from our reptilian contacts that back in their earlier days as well, they had techniques of that they would only use it for each other if they absolutely had to. That they really didn't like using it for a good period of time before they worked out some of the more safer issues with it. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think that since we're still talking about the Greys and influence and what they were doing to you, that we also know that they did have other psychological effects and things that they did to you. The Greys, I think one of the things they wanted to do, that they put forth an effort, is they wanted to make you in some ways more like them. So then that in turn would make your DNA, your blood, when they did their experiments, would make it even more palatable to what they were trying to pull off. You have a feeling about this, and I forget if it was Michael who told us or who, but also the idea that at a very young age, there's a good chance that they're the ones that changed your sexual nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
Want to mention that?
All right. I actually hadn't planned to till later, but that's okay.
Well, it happened early in life, so we're doing early life stuff.
Yeah. I think they had some influence on making me gay. I don't mean they made me gay. I don't believe you can make anybody gay. But I think what they did was...
Well, it is very genetic.
Yeah. I think what they did was they used various forms of conditioning to promote and prompt me into that direction. And it worked. I want to deal with another issue that I know people who see this are going to want to say, he can't be gay, he can't be Christ if he's gay. Well, that's a prejudice, and it's a judgment.
Well, before we jump into that, let me just say that they do, and many aliens do, know how to manipulate at a high level genetic disposition.
Yeah.
And not just pre-genetics, not just like, before you're born, but, after you're born, they can actually, change encoding on, genetic aspects of yourself. Yes. So, it's there's all kinds of things that they could feasibly, do to somebody.
That spindle in my head may have been part for that, because of the location where it was.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a tracking device. And if people say, oh yeah, these implants are tracking devices. No, that's the way a human would think. They're not tracking devices. They don't need those.
Well, they have those, but you think this one was what? Some kind of on-off switch to kill you if they wanted to?
I think it was a way to make me helpless in the times when they wanted to do whatever they wanted to me, and I think it was a way to influence my thought patterns at times, which they never were able to do. That didn't happen.
Yes.
But it perhaps was a way to make sure that I would be asleep during the time I'd be picked up, so that when I woke up, it was too late. I was already with them.
Right. And then I think this is a good time to tell the part of how you got struck by lightning more than once, and that at least one of those times that it was divine intervention, whether your higher self or some other helpful angels, or however you want to look at it. Actually, that you got struck because it was to render one of these implants inoperable, and mention about that, if you will, for a moment.
All right. In the 1980s, I was teaching, and somewhat in fact, in early 1990, I was teaching at a sheltered workshop in Central Florida for the mentally handicapped adults. Some of the most fulfilling work I've done in my life. And I miss that to this day. But we were having a really hellacious thunderstorm, even by Florida, Central Florida standards. The sky was black. I mean, really black. The thunder, lightning was constant. Rain was being whipped around. I'm outside in it trying to get one of our mentally handicapped adults to get out of my teacher's paraprofessional's car, because she would bring him to work at his workstation every day. And I was trying to get him to come to the building where it'd be safer. So here I'm standing with my arm on the car door, my hand on the car door, holding it open, saying, so-and-so, get in the building. And he was scared, and I understand it, I don't blame him. And he kept saying, no, I'm not going, no. Well, finally a bolt of lightning hit me, big time.
Finally.
Finally. Because it got him to move. That's what I mean.
Okay. Oh.
So here I'm holding the car door, and I'm looking at turquoise and silver, how can I put it? Silver crystalline multicolored dazzles going up and down my arm. Probably for a split second. It seemed like a couple of seconds. I'm sure it wasn't that long. I felt something misalign my upper back and neck. I told him, I said, all right, there's more where that came from. Get in the building. And to which he said, whoa, and he took off and ran into the building. I went next door to an office where I sat down with a paperclip, picking up non-magnetized paperclips in a line. A woman who worked as the receptionist came in and said, what are you doing? And I said, I just got hit by lightning. I'll call 911. I said, no, you won't, because if you do, I'm not going with them anyway. I said, I'm siphoning off some of the energy that I got from that blast. I was kind of on a high from it. It was great. But I found out from Michael.
Was that the first time you got hit?
No, there was a time before that.
Okay.
When I was on the phone one day, and we had another thunderstorm.
I've heard of it. It could happen when you're on a landline.
Yeah, the landline definitely. It wasn't. I didn't have a cell phone until much later. And it was so powerful that it threw the phone out of my hand and knocked my head to one side.
Yeah.
It didn't hurt me. I was told by Michael a year or two later after the impact, where I was holding the car door open at the shelter workshop, that was intended to short out the device in my chest.
Yes.
Which was intended to shut my heart off if I ever became a problem to the ETs, which I did.
Yes.
In the late 1990s. That's for another time, a later session. But apparently they knew that was going to happen well before it did. Perhaps they were doing some time travel, who knows, and found that out. Perhaps they were traveling from the future back to that time to install this, so I couldn't stop them. And it may have even shorted out the little device in my head. I do know that a friend of mine ran a metal detector over my head one time, and in one of the same area, the same region, picked up what looked like aluminum salts in a line, in a short line. So perhaps that bolt of lightning did more than one eye.
Aluminum's not good for your brain.
Yeah.
And what part of your head was this? I don't think you said the exact part.
Down in the occipital region of my brain, about near the center area.
Okay.
And
how do you think they got it?
All I know is there was a
were they able to get it deep into your brain from your nose?
No. The pain was behind my nose and eyes, but there was a bright flash of light, I think, that transferred it into me. Like matter transfer.
Oh, wow.
They knew right where to put it.
Okay. And there it is to this day.
Yeah. Unless it's been vaporized to some degree. Again, like I said, I have been hit by lightning.
Yeah.
I was hit by the side effects of lightning another time later on when I was trying to charge a car battery for a person in the rain. I was standing there I sometimes can do this by directing current from my hands to the car battery. And that you could smell the ozone and know it wasn't me, it was the lightning.
You did that one time with my car some years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It usually does. But when I was about 5, I believe, I was picked up again, found myself on what I described in my mind as a little boy that looked like New York City. Here's the bottom of the New York, here are the buildings with a ceiling on it, way out in what I call the night sky.
Yeah.
Apparently it was somewhere near the Pleiades. And I met an extraterrestrial who looked human. He was a reptilian shapeshifter. His name was Gary. He treated me with respect and kindness. He guided me around this place, showing me things that I didn't understand even. At the end of this session, at one point I did have to go. He said, I want you to see the doctor. And I don't know anything about it. I went into a room that was pitch black. I remember being put on a table. I don't remember anything after that other than being back out of that room and walking around with a woman whose name was Penny. She had red hair.
I hope it wasn't. I hope it wasn't Penny Dreadful.
Oh God, no. Anyway, she took me to a place on board that she said is sort of like what you call on Earth a malt shop or a drugstore where you can get ice cream.
Sure.
And oh boy, this was great. I was going to get chocolate ice cream.
Uh-huh.
They didn't bring that to me. They brought something that I didn't recognize. It was sweet and fresh, very fresh tasting, not like sugar, not like regular ice cream. And I thought, oh boy, I'll get a soda. Well, they didn't bring me a soda. They brought me some of the cleanest water you can drink, other than what we have here with our Berkey.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, this guy Gary takes me around, shows me different things. I saw in one room what looked like it had glass on all the way around, or part of the way around it, a real thick glass. And I'm assuming it probably wasn't glass, it was probably something else. But in the room there were different tubular lights that went around with little lights in these tubes. And I wanted, because I thought of Christmas lights. I wanted to go in and play with the Christmas lights. And he said, no, you can't do that. There's a poison in there that could kill you. And I said, I don't understand. He said, well, you won't, but it's radiation. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you can't see it, you can't taste it, but it's there, and it can make you sick or even kill you. You can't go beyond, you can't go inside that room. So then, and he's holding me by the hand, taking me around the ship. He's wearing a bomber jacket, and I said, where did you get that? And he said, from a friend of mine back on Earth. And I said, did you fly airplanes? He said, yes, and I've flown other things too. And then he showed me some of the things that he's flown. They weren't airplanes. We went to a flight deck, freezing cold, air movement constantly. We're up on a catwalk, looking down at a gray surface, brownish gray surface, and there are areas marked off. One of these multiple disc on top of a disc on top of a disc objects, and the discs are different sizes, is lifting off the floor by itself. And he said, now these are some of the things that I fly. And I remember him telling me at that point he was going to have
But these were like models, right?
No.
Oh, you were looking, because you were like making a,
Yeah,
you were showing with your hands that.
Oh, they were huge. They were.
Oh, okay.
The one I was seeing would take up the middle of this living room easily.
Okay.
This is a huge flight deck.
Okay.
And, excuse me, part of it was open to space.
So this was a huge flight deck that it had an open wall to space on what you might call a mothership.
Yeah. But nowadays you would.
A reptilian mothership.
Apparently, or maybe Pleiadian. Gary had connections with a lot of cultures.
Yes.
And he was sort of what we might call like a super spy with different cultures, but he was trying to work for the betterment of everything if he could.
Yeah. And we later, just to interject, you later found out that he had been an alien friend of yours for a long time, that he actually, you actually knew him 2,000 years ago.
Yeah. When I was teaching when I was teaching here.
And he, I think he told us that he was Luke, right?
That's right.
Of the Bible.
The physician, the great physician.
Yeah.
And the reptilian previous empire, now alliance, since they're turning over a new leaf. Every even what we would call a grunt, every soldier in the field has medical training.
Yeah.
They're what we would call at lowest level an MD.
Yeah. Well, they live long enough that they can literally learn everything there is to learn, each and every one of them, because they have their average lives, go into 60, 70,000 years easily.
At least.
That we know.
Yeah.
And partly because of their genetics, and we actually have genetics built into us that actually cause our bodies to age and shut down. But they have different and better genetics when it comes to that, and they also have techniques that they employ. They have incredible anti-aging techniques that periodically they administer. They go in like we go in for a physical or something, and they have these things administered to them, and it greatly extends their life. So,
yeah.
All right, so. You had some of this far out ice cream and some heavenly tasting water, and then what?
Far out heavenly always one. Then that's when Barry took me to the flight deck to show me what has flown. He then told me he was going to have to turn me back over to other ETs, the Greys, to take me back home. I began crying, and I didn't want to leave him. I enjoyed being around him.
Yeah.
The stuff he was showing me was amazing. Then he volunteered to come with me this one time, and I said, "Good, so I won't be hurt for a change." And I saw him, I think, one other time. It was in that same period of time afterwards. Maybe they were checking on whatever was done to me at the quote doctor's room, whatever that was. I know one time I was talking with him, and I was making mention of a war that I had fought, and I fought it too well, and maybe in some ways it hurt God's feelings. And he said, "You don't need to worry about that now." He said, "You're very young." He said, "You will come to find out about it in the future," which I did. And he said, "You will know what to do then," which I hope I know what to do. This is something, again, for a little later session. But
also, to help this makes a little more sense, Gary was one of the few reptilians that had, how do I say this? He had very, very powerful positions in the reptilian military.
Yeah.
The reptilians at this time did not have our best interest in mind, but he was secretly working toward that end. He is somewhat very prophetic of a person, and he knew what he was here to do, and he knew who Bob was, and had in his lifetime he had befriended Bob several times in several lives. So as far as reptilians were concerned, if they were to find out at that time what he was doing, he would have been found out to be a traitor. Yeah, so I wanted to make that clear to show you. But one more thing I'll enumerate on him is that I forget how many years ago, but let's say roughly 8 years ago, for a period of a few years, several years, he actually became what we would think of as the president of the reptilian race. They call it the
lead senator.
The lead senator is how it translates, and he held that position until he was assassinated. Because even though the reptilians have, by and large, turned over a new leaf, they still have ancient old factions of families that are still holding on to old dark ways and are still not happy about things. And some of them are getting weeded out, and whole bloodlines are being extracted as their treacheries come to light. So it's it's a very wild time for a lot of these other races, not just their own. All right, go ahead. We've got a few more minutes, and then I've got to.
Some of these old families they link back to what we call the fallen ones, the war in heaven or the war in the heavens, and a lot of them are being killed off by the reptilians at this time because they don't want anything to do with them anymore. I want to step onto another note that I started on. I'm gay. I'm extremely overweight. I'm suffering from severe scoliosis and congestive heart failure. And any of these and other things, I'm sure, could be said, oh, you can't be Christ because of this or that or the other.
Right.
Anytime we say that about anyone, it's a judgment. 2,000 years ago, I told you not to judge so that you would not be judged. The simple thing is, you're the one doing the judgment against yourself the moment you judge somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Very simple and very real. The minute you say, oh, this person couldn't be Christ, this person couldn't be God, then you are condemning not them, but yourself. You're holding back from yourself, robbing yourself. Don't. Get past the need to have to judge like that. You can say what you want, that you don't agree with a person being overweight, you think it's bad for them, or that you think that gay is wrong or something, but you don't judge that person. When you do, you judge yourself, not them. It comes back on you because you're the one giving that out.
Yeah.
And then you've closed doors to your own future and your own possibility of what you could have. I'm here to tell you that each one of you is as much Christ as I am, if you choose to be. Don't close that door off by a judgment.
Yeah.
I'm who I am because that's who I've been since before the beginning of all things. Time will come when I'm obsolete. I'm looking forward to that time. But this, again, though it's about my life right now, it's really about you. And showing you what potentials are out there for what possibilities. And showing you what potentials of choices you can make for yourselves. What?
1 minute left.
Oh, okay. I guess let's close it now and we'll pick it up again a little later.
Okay.